But what's interesting is some of the economists and the Australian people in power, the political people that are in power, they're doing good things for Australia. When I'm looking at a region, I need to understand what this metric means and understand what is happening in this area so I can make a calculated decision. So when I'm looking at these industries, I want to make sure these industries are performing.
We believe every Australian deserves a right to own at the very least 5 investment properties. I'm Adrian Trimboli.
And I'm Frank Ambesi, and welcome to the Invest in You podcast.
So today I'm talking about the opportunity on the horizon. Okay, what am I talking about? I'm talking about what is happening. What is in the weeds that doesn't get spoken about. What the federal, the state, the local governments don't really speak about too much. But more importantly, we don't understand that when these things do happen and then they release it and take action on it, it's adding more fuel to the fire. More fuel to the fire. That the big question is, what is going to happen in some of these property markets when I talk about this metric. This powerful metric that I use. It's one of our key fundamentals in our 72-step process, and it's something that we need to understand and use this metric, because what it does, it's going to help us with finding the shakers and movers moving to new opportunities across the country. To new opportunities. I'm not talking about internal migration. I'm talking about something else that's going to increase the value of that economy, increase the GRP of that economy, and of course create more people to migrate there, like I've just mentioned. But it's not talking specifically about internal migration. We're talking about something else. We're talking about job vacancies. We're talking about jobs getting created as well, and what that's doing for these certain areas and what's happening and how it's going to add more fuel to the fire. So stay tuned, listen to the very end, because you're going to get a lot of value here that I'm trying to give, so you can go out there and make sure you make the right decision when you're doing your own research, and you can look at data points and compare it to each other. Now, at the very end, I do leave something with you, which is very important. I want you to say to the very end is about understanding the why, okay? And asking the why, okay? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Okay, why? The more whys you ask when you're doing your research, the more answers you will get, and you'll get down to the crux of everything. So thank you. Stay to the very end. And if you did get value from this, I just ask for one thing, is please just leave us a review, as it means the world to us, as we're just trying to educate and try and get this message out to as many Australians and people around in the world, if they do listen to this podcast, to understand about property fundamentals and what drives the property market. The opportunity is on the horizon, okay? There is a lot of things happening, okay? When I see a lot of things that are happening, there's a lot of things in the weeds that we don't see, okay, that don't get spoken about on TV a lot, okay, that the federal, the state, and the local government are doing at the moment, and which is actually fueling the property market. For some people, they may not know what I'm going to talk about or understand at this point in time, because I haven't revealed anything. But what's interesting is some of the economists and the Australian people in power, the political people that are in power, they're doing good things for Australia. But then what it will do is fuel the property market. And for some people, they might think that's a terrible thing, because property prices are growing pretty rapidly at the moment, which they are. And there's a number of reasons of why. But at the moment, we're seeing certain areas on fire. Property prices are growing 10, 20, 30%, if not more, in some of these areas. And there's a number of reasons why they're growing at that current rate. So I want to talk about some of these things and what's going on with internal migration, but more importantly, it's not so much internal migration. People migrate from an area to another area for a number of reasons. But I want to talk about something that doesn't really get spoken about, okay? And it's something that is, the proof is in kind of the pudding here, but of course we need to look at data and piece it all together. This is one of our strong fundamentals that we use from our 72-step process. When I'm looking at a region, I need to understand what this metric means and understand what is happening in this area, so I can make a calculated decision. So when I'm looking at a property market, I want to make sure, I'm looking at the economy first. The economy is the most important thing. So you're looking like a bird's eye view, and you're looking down what's going on. Okay. One way to measure an economy, if it's performing and making money, is the GRP. Okay, the gross regional product. How I look at it as, and this is it's an easy analogy to kind of create a picture in your mind so you can understand this, is, let's say I want to buy a business as an investment. What's the number one thing first you got to check? Is the business making money? Is it profitable? And is it profitable for a number of years? And you want to see it increasing every single year. When you start to see that, you start to say, okay, this is great. It starts to give you a bit of reassurance. What's going on? Since if it doesn't do that, then you kind of want to walk away from a market. So when I'm looking at this, I want to look at the GRP at a particular area, okay, and understand what it's doing and is it performing. And if so, you start to see a correlation with property prices and a whole bunch of other things that follow that trend as well. So every area, local government area, which is your LGA, we call them, okay, which is your council area, okay, or your regions. Everyone has a strategic plan, okay? It starts from the federal. The federal will give you a kind of a budget and kind of an outlook of what they're trying to do. The state levels will have their targets of what they need to do for their state. And then, of course, they'll pass it on down to the local government areas. And the local government areas are going to do their thing on what they need to do with their strategic plan to increase the performance of that economy, attract more people there, yada, yada, okay? So as we know, there's a lot of industries that do drive a market, from construction, healthcare, manufacturing, ports, renewable energies, logistics and defense force, education, mining, etc., etc. Okay, the list goes on. It's quite big. So when I'm looking at these industries, I want to make sure that these industries are performing. So what I want to talk about today, this is the I guess the secret thing, the secret sauce, is I want to look at job advertisement. Okay. How many jobs are getting advertised in an area? Very important metric, okay, that we look at, and has a correlation with property prices. Sometimes not, not in hand, and that's when you have to go a little bit deeper and have a look. Okay, well, what's going on? What else is happening here? Because of course it's very important. So I want to just talk about some. I want to peel it back. I want to go to COVID. I want to go to 2020, 2021. There was a lot of industries. There's a lot of suburbs and a lot of areas and regions in Australia that were on fire. 96% of regions around Australia during COVID were on fire. A lot of it was speculation. Okay, a lot of it was because of cheap money as well. But I want to peel the onion back and have a look. During that time, there's a lot of areas that are performing quite well still and are on fire. And I look at the correlation of some of these data points of what's happened from a capital growth perspective, but as well of jobs getting created during those times. So let's have a look at it. And let's peel back the onion. Okay, let's have a look at Ipswich. Ipswich, of course, we know where Ipswich is, south about 20 minutes, 25 k's out of south of Brisbane. And Ipswich had, during that time from 2020 to 2021, had an 8.1% increase in jobs. One of the best performing property markets in Brisbane there. During that time, Ipswich grew 31%. Okay, big correlation of what we're seeing there. Another place that I love, and it's one of my favorite locations and favorite places that we have invested in as well for our clients, is a place called Bundaberg. 7% increase in jobs during 2020 to 2021. Bundaberg grew by 22%. Okay, big increase. Okay, now let's have a look at some other regions, and I don't want to get into too many regions, but we'll get into a few here. We'll get into Launceston, a 7% increase in jobs. Okay. During that time as well, Launceston did follow a trend of around 6% increase in capital growth. And you might say, Frank, that's not a lot. That hasn't increased that much. No, it hasn't. But Launceston has been having a big increase in jobs since 2017. Okay, since 2017 to 2019, there was about a 53% increase in jobs during those times. So during 2017 to 2019, we did see a big surge in property prices then. And so, when I really look at that data, it's quite interesting, because if we have a look at how much the property market grew by, the market grew in Launceston by 33% during 2017 to 2019. Okay, so pretty big increase when you really look at the data there as well. Back then it did have a big increase in jobs, which of advertisement of 53%, which is quite huge when you really look at it. But when you really look at that was a 53 increase in jobs. But when I have a look at it as well, is that property market around that time was probably one of the best property markets to invest in Launceston back around that 2017-19 mark, because of what was going on. Okay, now, so I've labelled a few places here that have done quite well, as we know. Okay, which was awesome. Okay, and some of these markets are performing still well. Mandurah is another market. 9% increase in jobs. 9.4 to be exact, and it grew 9% during 2020 to 2021. But Mandurah has actually been one of the best property markets to invest in WA since then as well. So it's doing extremely well. Okay, and we've seen some very, very strong growth since then, which is awesome, and that's good to see. So there's a lot of things happening, and when I peel back the onion, let's go back and we have a look at 2020 to 2024. Some of these regions I just spoke about, like Bundaberg, it's grown 106% since then. Okay, but a lot of jobs getting increased every single year as well. That's just the first year of I think it had a 7% increase in jobs. Same with Toowoomba. Toowoomba's done extremely well, 84% since then as well. And Launceston's done about 75%, from 2020 to 2024 as well. So as we can see, we've seen a big increase. What's interesting, during that time, we had a look at Melbourne as a whole. Melbourne had an increase of jobs of 5.9% as a whole. Okay, Melbourne's property market during 2020 to 2021 grew 0.85%. 0.85% didn't grow, as we know. Melbourne's market was one of the most underperforming markets during COVID and is currently today. Okay, from 2020 to 2024, as Melbourne as a whole has grown 15%. Okay, so really, when I look at this, you can put your money in Melbourne, like people like Capital Cities. I reckon it's consistent, it keeps growing in value. Or you can be in Bundaberg, it's grown 106%, and reap the rewards. And I say this to give people a bit of clarity about don't knock regional towns when you can look at data and look at the performance of what they're doing. We've purchased a lot of property in some of these areas I've mentioned, okay, especially your Toowoomba's and your Bundabergs and your Rockhamptons and your Mandurahs and stuff like that. And our clients have reaped the reward. Okay, our clients have really, really, grabbed that opportunity and taken it. And some of our clients, their properties are nearly doubled in the space of 3 years in some of these areas, which is pretty crazy when you really think about it, about what's going on. So data is very important. We need to look at this. We can't just, shake it off and be like, no. We're just going to, invest in capital cities. Okay, there is capital cities that have done well. Like I said, Logan and Ipswiches and stuff like that have grown a fair bit. A lot of jobs getting created. Of course, places like in Melbourne haven't done quite well. Same with Sydney. Sydney had a big increase in jobs, 31% increase in jobs during that time. Sydney's property market grew around 5% during 2020 to 2021. Okay, so it's just something to keep in mind. Now, let's just fast forward this, because what's interesting is that we see COVID, it's added a lot of fuel to the fire. Are these markets still performing? What's going on? How many jobs are getting created? And where are the jobs? So with this new data that's coming out from, February 2024, okay, this is the latest data. The new data should be coming out anytime at the end of this month, hopefully maybe June. We're still seeing a high increase in job vacancy trends. Okay, what's been interesting from 2012 to 2019, 2020, around there, capital cities, the metro areas, were dominating the market compared to regional towns. Okay, since around 2020, there has been more job increases and vacancies in regional towns, and it's still greater than capital cities today. Okay, so when we look at this, I look at this, and this is quite interesting, because it says a lot. There's a lot of proof in the pudding here that there's a lot of attraction going towards the regional towns. There's a lot of jobs getting available, and when you see that, it attracts more people. And so they're targeting certain sectors. And the good thing is that we have a strong population increase in Australia, as we know, trying to target 250,000 to nearly half a million people to Australia every single year, which is good in a way, but it can be very catastrophic. We have a undersupply of housing, which is going to create more fuel to the fire for the housing market, which is, yes, it's a good thing for property investors. It can be a bad thing for property owners to try and get into the market. Okay, but let's just bring it back to these job availabilities. You can go to a regional town and get a job in the medical field and probably get paid an extra $20 or $30 extra per hour. Okay, which is quite interesting. I've got a couple of clients that are in that field. Same goes for some professional industries and educational industries as well. So it's attracting people to migrate to some of these regional towns. Some of these regional towns are beautiful and has a lot to offer. And people go, why the hell would people want to live in some of these regional towns? There's a number of reasons: strong sense of community, commute to work, access to natural wonders. Okay, you can get some amazing things there. Cutting out, an opportunity, job opportunity, which is one of them. And of course, and then there's a change in lifestyle as well. So there's kind of a number of reasons of why this is quite interesting of what's going on now. We when we look at data as well, I look at population, and I look at 40% of Australia's population is made up of Melbourne and Sydney. Okay, so a lot of people there. And then when we combine all the capital cities, it's around 17 million people that are living in capital cities across the country. And then of course you've got about 8.8 million people living across regional towns around Australia and rural towns as well. Okay, and so that there, when we start to see, job increases in some of these areas, and especially in regional towns, and you see a 10% or a 5% or a 7% increase, you start to attract more people, like I've just mentioned. Okay. The good thing is, with the people that are migrating here from overseas, a lot of it's skilled workers. Skilled workers mean that they're going to be elected and go into certain areas. There is a plan that the government has put in place, which is quite interesting, which you can get all this information that they're going to allocate a percentage of these people going into regional areas and certain capital cities as well. Okay, we've got to distribute the people around. We can't all just go to Melbourne and Sydney. Now, what is also interesting, with some of the new jobs that have been created by the Albanese group, of course, the government there, it was 820,000 jobs to be created, okay, which is a big increase around Australia, okay, and so they're allocating some of these jobs around the country, which is great around the workforce, is going to help with, attracting more people in certain areas, but as well, they're doing that as well because of the population increase of what's happening around Australia, okay, so as we move on, okay, we start to have a look at, okay, well, Frank, this is all great, but let's talk about the here and now, what's going on in some of these markets, where to look, where should we be buying, and all these type of other things. So let's get into it and have a look at some of these other areas that are, there's a kind of a correlation of things happening. So there's a record, the top, I want to, talk about some regions that have, done quite well. These are regional towns, okay, the largest monthly increase in vacancies, okay, so increasing of jobs, okay. For some people, they can look at this as a negative thing because it's, how come there's so many jobs available in the area? But when you look at data, like I just mentioned, it does attract more people. I want to talk about Port Augusta and the Irie Peninsula as well, which is, your Whyalla region. There has been an increase in jobs by 10% in the month in January. 10% increase in jobs. Okay. And so with this, okay, this is attracting more people. Okay. When we have a look, and I want to touch on Port Augusta here, because Port Augusta, full disclaimer, I'm not saying to invest here. It's a market we don't invest in. It's very reliant on one sector. That's a resource sector. So it's very important to understand that and not just jump into something that you don't know. When we look at a 10% increase, okay, in jobs, but in the last 12 months, it's grown by 12%. Okay, so it's doing extremely well. Okay, and so that's very important to understand that. And we want to make sure that, of course, when we're getting into a market like that, you need to make sure you're doing your right calculations and understand, okay, there has been an increase in jobs. What sort of jobs? Because you don't want to increase in jobs where it's just dominated in a certain one sector. It's going to be very, very dangerous for you because then you're just, you're buying in a resource sector or an area that's dominated by one sector. If something was to happen or they pull a pin on something, what happens? Probably market starts to follow that trend and starts to go in the opposite direction, not going up, but going down in value. So when we look at the Port Augusta region, it's had an increase of, well, I said 10% of increase in jobs, but what's happened is there's about 640 jobs available and they're targeting certain sectors, okay? Predominantly is about 192 jobs getting created or available in the professional industries. Then we've got a target of, let me just see how many jobs are getting created here. 110 in the tradie industry or trades industry. Then, of course, we've got personal services and community services, 83 jobs, of course. Clinical and administration work, 63 jobs. Labor force is about 45. Manager, 41. Machine operator, 36. And then, of course, sales roles about 31. So as you can see, quite diverse. But what's interesting, when you look at the professional services, they're trying to target and they're trying to get a little bit more people coming there. And so what areas, where are they attracting these type of people for the professional services? Okay, a lot of it's the healthcare sector, the medical practitioners and diagnostic health practitioners to come into these areas as well. Legal and social, well-being as well. They're attracting people there as well in the law sector. And then, of course, the fourth on the list is engineering. So as you can see here, they're starting to evolve in Port Augusta, because once again, like I said, it's very very reliant on the mining sector. But it's quite interesting when we look at this data that there has been a big shift, but we're seeing property prices follow that. Now, once again, full disclaimer, I'm not saying go invest here, but it's quite interesting when we look at this data as well. Okay, and so today, this is a short podcast. I want to give people a bit of clarity about what we're talking about here, about understanding job vacancies and what's available and how it attracts more people into some of these areas. Okay, and so, which is interesting. Okay, when we look at the data. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a bit of context of what's happening. I see there is a lot of jobs getting available in some of these areas here as well. Who's on the radar and has in the last if we have a look at some other things here, and I'll kind of give some people a bit more context and some information about some other areas, is the 5 regions with the biggest jump in vacancies in April 2024 have just come out. Okay, and what's interesting is here when we look at this data, we look at the regional Northern Territory. Okay, 13% increase. Okay, we see the Northwest Tasmania 10% increase. The Launceston region 7.5%. Hobart, okay, and Southern Tasmania 6.5, and the Murray Mallee, okay, which is 5.6, which is I think your Shepparton and your Cobram region there. So, which is fantastic. We have seen a big increase and a bit of a shift. If we look at the annual change, Tasmania is kind of leading the charge here for increases in jobs, okay, which is about 7.4% increase, which is quite interesting to see around the country. So, am I saying Tasmania is a good place to be in the next 12 months? No, not necessarily. Okay, but there is a lot of jobs available that are coming up on the vacancy, but it can as well mean the opposite thing as well when people are leaving there as well. So you need to follow this data with population increase and in influx of people, and if there is a decrease, and if so, what you need to understand there, because don't just take this data and say let's run with it. There's been an increase in jobs or availability in jobs on Seek, and there's more jobs available now in certain parts of Tasmania. We should invest here. No, you need to look at the migration of people. You need to look at the GRP. You need to look at property supply levels. Okay, and you've got to understand, okay, well, what industries are losing jobs if there's more jobs coming on the market from a vacancy perspective. Okay, and have a look at that sector. Is that sector performing or not? Okay, so you start to peel it back a little bit more. Even again, you always have to ask the reason why. But why is this happening? What's happening here? Why was there a growth in the property market? Why did that happen? Okay, why is there more vacancies for jobs in these certain areas? Is it a good thing? Yes, it can be. Why? Okay, is it a bad thing? Yes, why? Okay, so the why is very important here with some of these things. But I want to give you a bit of context on some of the things that you need to look into when you're doing some of your analysis. So some good signs, a lot of jobs getting created, there's a lot of job vacancies available as well in some of these regional areas where the government pointing people in certain areas of regional towns, which I like a lot. But as you can see from COVID, there's been a lot of regions that aren't performing since COVID, I should say, that are not performing at all. Okay, it was a lot of speculation, a lot of cheap money, a lot of emotional buying. Okay, a lot of cowboys were out there, unfortunately. Okay, but since then, the ones that have done the research and purchased, for instance, like our clients that have purchased in the Toowoomba's, the Wagga Waggas, we've purchased in, your Bundabergs, your Rockhamptons and stuff like that, your Mandurahs and stuff like that as well, and your Perth and your Logans, they're reaped the reward. Okay, my clients know who they are. Okay, but this is not about us and saying, look, this is what we do. This is about you doing this on your own, wanting to learn about this. This is going to help you and give you a bit of clarity. Okay, if someone out there that wants to get into the buyer's agency field or become get into your own portfolio, create your own portfolio, this is something to take in consideration. Very important. And look at these data points. Make sure you ask the question, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why did that happen? Okay, go back, have a look at what industries are driving it. And so a lot of this information you can get. One of my resources that I do use is the Regional Institute of Australia. Okay, it's quite an interesting website. You can sign up to it as well. There is a membership cost, and you get more data as well. But I like using some of the features that they have there. I like to use ABS data as well, and that kind of gives me a bit of clarity about where jobs are getting available, what industries are driving the market. Has there been an increase, and like to compare it to the previous history as well, because you compare from the previous history to now, if there has been a shift and been an increase in certain sectors, it means that the property market is moving in the right direction. So I'll leave that with you. Hopefully, if you did get value from this podcast, all I would like to do is if you guys could actually share this podcast with someone that is looking to get into the property market, that's trying to do their own research, because this can save them a lot of time. This can save them and help them to narrow down their search and make sure they actually can do the right thing. Will look at the right things when they're getting into the property market. So please share this with someone if you know someone that's trying to get into the market, trying to do it themselves, trying to maybe become a buyer's agent and learn about research. This podcast will definitely help them. And so we'll leave this with you. I'll see you at our next episode, and thank you for staying tuned to the very end.